The helicopter descended toward the island. Howard Stark sat in the back, silent, his hands clasped together as he stared out the window. He had kept his promise even after the attack and the close call that nearly took his life. His security teams had wanted him to lie low for a while, heck, even Fury told him to stay low, but despite all that, Howard came. He wanted to see Tony and his accomplishments, but as the island came into view, he realized he had severely underestimated what Tony had built here. Howard had expected a research facility. Maybe a few high-tech labs, some security, the kind of operation Stark Industries could eventually integrate into its long-term development. What he saw instead, something straight out of science fiction. A massive, semi-transparent energy field flickered across the island's perimeter. The moment the helicopter approached, Howard felt a faint vibration in his bones, like passing through an invisible barrier. Beyond the shield, the island wasn't just a base. It was a fortress. Automated defensive turrets tracked the helicopter's movement. Drones hovered silently in formation, scanning every inch of the aircraft as if deciding whether or not to shoot it down. And then there were the machines. Howard caught a glimpse of something patrolling the outskirts. A quadrupedal mech, moving around the area. It stopped for a moment, its glowing blue optics turning toward the helicopter, and Howard could swear it was looking right at him. Jesus Christ, Tony. What the hell have you built? The helicopter's descent slowed, the landing pad rising slightly as if adjusting itself for a smoother touchdown. Howard didn't move right away. Something felt off, not in a threatening way, but in a way that made his instincts tingle. He had been in enough war zones to recognize that feeling. The moment the helicopter doors opened, Tony was already there, sunglasses on, hands in his pockets, smirking. "Welcome to Horizon, Pops," Tony called over the roar of the blades. "Try not to have a heart attack." Howard scoffed, stepping out onto the landing pad. "With the way you've set this place up, I'm surprised I wasn't shot out of the sky." Tony grinned. "Well, you almost were. I had to override the automated defenses last second." Howard froze mid-step. "You're joking." Tony just smirked. Howard let out a slow breath. "Jesus Christ, Tony." "I'm joking," Tony chuckled, but as he took his first few steps, the feeling returned, that odd, nagging sensation. Something was missing. As Tony led him deeper into the base, Howard's eyes scanned everything. The buildings, the technology, the security systems, it was all leagues ahead of anything on the market. Even SHIELD security tech pales in comparison, but what stood out wasn't the tech. It was the people. Or rather, the women. Every single person they passed, whether it was a researcher reviewing holographic blueprints, an engineer calibrating a drone, or a security officer patrolling the area, was female. Not a single male worker in sight. Howard didn't comment on it right away. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe he was overthinking it, but the more they walked, the more obvious it became. Even the combat personnel training in the distance, moving like seasoned professionals, were women. Howard's brow furrowed. Alright, what the hell is going on here? By the time they stepped into the central research hub, Howard was sure of it. This wasn't just some weird hiring coincidence. Tony had deliberately staffed this entire base with women. Howard stopped walking. Tony took a few more steps before noticing. Something wrong? Howard folded his arms. "Yeah. You gonna tell me why every single worker here is a woman?" Tony blinked behind his sunglasses, then smirked. "Took you long enough to notice." Howard's frown deepened. Was this some kind of hiring preference? Or did you just forget to put out applications for men? Tony chuckled. "Relax, Pops. I didn't start some anti-dude movement." Howard raised an eyebrow. "Care to explain?" Tony exhaled through his nose. "I told you I'd hire some people eventually. And I did. I just had specific candidates in mind." Howard narrowed his eyes. "What kind of candidates?" Tony's smirk faded just slightly. "The best ones," he said simply. "Don't worry about it. They are good at their jobs." Howard stared at Tony for a long moment, eyes narrowing. He could tell when his son was dodging a question, but for now, he let it slide. Tony wasn't the type to do anything without a reason. If the entire workforce were female, it meant there was a calculated decision behind it. He'd get his answers eventually. "All right," Howard said, exhaling. "Show me what you've been working on." Tony grinned. "Oh, I thought you'd never ask." With a flick of his wrist, Tony pulled up a holographic interface. A blue pulse ran through the walls, and suddenly, the floor beneath them shifted. The walls, once smooth metal, began to split apart, revealing massive underground corridors descending deep into the island. Howard took a step back, his eyebrows raising slightly. "Jesus, kid. You built a whole underground facility?" Tony smirked. "Above ground is for show. Below? That's where the real magic happens." The ground beneath them began to lower, a hidden elevator seamlessly taking them down. Howard watched as the upper level disappeared, replaced by a vast, illuminated research complex, main lab. The first thing Howard noticed, the sheer scale of it. Holographic displays filled the room, showcasing intricate biomedical data, nanotech schematics, and real-time simulations of cellular regeneration. Tony stepped forward, arms spread out. "All right, Pops. Time for the grand tour." 3 years of work, blood, sweat, and borderline caffeine addiction, all leading to this. Howard folded his arms, giving him a skeptical look. "You sure I won't regret this?" Tony smirked. "Oh, you will. Your mind's about to get blown." Howard sighed. "Just get on with it, kid." Tony tapped on a hollow interface. A floating 3D model of a handheld device materialized in front of them, rotating slowly. Howard's eyes narrowed as he studied the design. It looked deceptively simple. A simple, handheld scanner, something that could fit in the palm of a hand, yet it had more computational power than an entire hospital's imaging department. Tony swiped through the hologram, displaying 3D live demonstrations. Point 1 showed the device scanning a patient's chest in seconds, revealing a full 3D model of their internal organs with stunning accuracy. Another showed a microscopic scan of nerve pathways, highlighting damaged areas in real time. Tony grinned, watching his father's expression shift from curiosity to genuine intrigue. "Say hello to the anatomy mapping device. One scan, and you've got a complete breakdown of a person's body, down to the cellular level." Howard raised an eyebrow. "CT scans and MRIs already exist, Tony. What makes this so special?" Tony smirked. "Speed, accuracy, and zero radiation exposure. This thing picks up tumors, aneurysms, even genetic disorders before they manifest. No invasive procedures, no expensive hospital stays, just instant diagnosis." Howard's gaze flicked back to the demo. "Holy hell," Tony nodded. "Exactly. Imagine paramedics scanning an accident victim in the field and knowing exactly what's wrong, like internal bleeding, fractures, or organ damage, before they even reach the hospital. No more trial and error surgeries. No more misdiagnoses. Just, pure medical precision." Howard took a deep breath. "You're gonna put a lot of hospitals out of business with this." Tony shrugged. If they can't keep up, that's their problem." Howard chuckled. "Goddamn, kid. This is something. This could change everything. This alone can save so many lives." Tony smirked. "We're just getting started." He swiped again. The scanner hologram disappeared, replaced by a lifelike model of a human. It moved, not like a robotic prosthetic. Not stiff. Not mechanical. It moved naturally, the fingers curling and flexing with fluid, organic motion. Howard's breath caught. "No way." Tony grinned. "Meet the future of prosthetics," he said, watching his father's reaction. "No mechanical joints, no clunky interfaces, just seamless integration between flesh and machine." Howard stepped forward, watching as the holographic arm responded to neural signals. "How?" "Bionanites." Tony tapped the interface, zooming in. "Tiny, self-repairing nanites that fuse directly with nerve endings. No need for brain implants or risky neural surgery, just plug-and-play human augmentation. Howard's mind raced. Nanomachines? But how? I've been researching nanotechnology for years and barely managed to get small breakthroughs. These things eat up energy like there's no tomorrow. Heck, SHIELD, Oscorp, and Hammer Industries failed to achieve much in this field, and most ended up in disasters. And here's my son, going around like it's no big deal. Nanite August. Good job, Tony. This wasn't just an advancement, this was a revolution that he had seen failed attempts at this before. Hammer Tech tried neural-linked prosthetics years ago. It was a disaster, expensive, unstable, and killed half the test subjects, but this was different. Howard rubbed his chin. So, you're saying an amputee could just, what? Attach one of these, and it works instantly? Tony nodded. 24 hours calibration time. No muscle reconditioning. The nanites do all the work, like fusing with nerve endings, replicating sensory input, and adapting in real time. They can even grow with the user, adjusting over time just like real muscle tissue. As for the power source, it runs on a microreactor which requires juice every 1 month or so, depending on the quality. Howard exhaled sharply. Jesus. Tony swiped again, new data appeared, heavy checkmark patients regaining full sensation, including touch, heat, and pressure, heavy checkmark soldiers regaining lost limbs, able to fight again, heavy checkmark children born without limbs getting a chance at a normal life. This isn't just about replacing lost limbs, Tony said. It's about making something better. Howard turned to his son, his expression unreadable. You realize what you've done here? He asked quietly. Tony smirked. Yeah. Built the future. Howard shook his head. No, Tony. This is gonna shake the world. Tony's smirk widened. That's the idea. Howard folded his arms. You do know what's going to happen next, right? Tony shrugged. The pharma industry is gonna have a heart attack, and governments are gonna try and steal it. Not to mention those criminals. Howard exhaled. Damn right, they will. Tony leaned against the console. That's why I'm controlling the rollout. Step by step. First, the anatomy scanner, introduce it as a simple medical tool. Let the world get used to nanite-based tech before I drop the real bombshell. Howard nodded slowly. Smart. But as you said, you're gonna have every military contractor, every world leader, every shadow organization knocking on your door. Tony smirked. Let them knock. Howard studied his son for a long moment. 3 years ago, Tony was just a brilliant, reckless kid with a vision. Now he was playing at a whole different level, and for the first time in a long while, Howard wasn't sure if he should be proud, or terrified. Howard let out a long sigh. All right, genius. You win. I'm impressed. Tony grinned. Knew it. Howard shook his head, chuckling. Goddamn, Tony. I can't even call you a kid anymore. All right, genius. What's next? You already flipped the medical industry on its head. What now? Instant teleportation? Time travel? Tony smirked. Nah. Too messy. But I did build a few things that'll make us very, very rich. Howard arched an eyebrow. Now you have my attention. Let's talk police work. Tony gestured toward a row of armored suits displayed on metal racks. The suits weren't bulky military exoskeletons. They were lightweight armor designed to be worn by law enforcement officers without slowing them down. Meet the Aegis suit, Tony said, running his fingers over the armor plating. Non-restrictive, lightweight, and made with a titanium polymer weave. It can stop high-caliber rounds, absorbs blunt force trauma, and comes with built-in medical support. Howard's eyes narrowed as he examined the suit closely. It wasn't like any riot gear or Kevlar vest currently on the market. The plates flex slightly at the joints, allowing for full mobility. Tony continued, it's got temperature regulation, AI-assisted threat detection, and even a built-in defibrillator system because cops don't just need protection, they need survival tools. Also, hidden stun emitters in the gloves, just in case they need to end a fight without pulling a trigger. Howard let out a low whistle. This time, he couldn't control his excitement. Damn. You're about to put every police gear manufacturer out of business. That's the goal, Tony replied with a smirk. We mass-produce these under Stark Industries, integrate them through your contracts with law enforcement, and before long? Every cop in the country is running my tech instead of outdated bulletproof vests. Howard folded his arms. And the government? Tony shrugged. They'll resist at first. Too much bureaucratic red tape. But when they see local police outperforming SWAT teams, they'll fall in line. Howard grinned. You've thought this through. Tony smirked. Always do. Tony led Howard to another section of the lab, where a weapon rack stood lined with what looked like modified handguns, batons, and compact rifle-like devices. Okay, Tony said, picking up what looked like a sleek silver handgun. This little beauty? The Guardian MKI. It's a non-lethal civilian defense weapon. Fires high-density shock pulses strong enough to drop an armed attacker without causing permanent damage. Howard raised an eyebrow. Stun guns already exist, kid. Tony smirked. Yeah, and they suck. Short range, slow charge time, unreliable in extreme conditions. This bad boy? Instant recharge, 50-foot effective range, and no need for physical contact. It works even through light armor and thick clothing. Oh, and the best part? He pointed at the side of the gun, where a small biometric scanner rested. Only the registered owner can fire it. So, no stolen weapons being turned against their owners. Howard exhaled. Huh. That's actually brilliant. Tony wasn't done. He walked over and picked up what looked like a collapsible baton. This? The Widow batons. He pressed a button, and the baton extended instantly, electricity crackling along its length. Howard's eyebrows shot up. Hits like a baseball bat, stuns like a taser, and bonus, it's damn near unbreakable. Also, adjustable voltage, in case you need to go from stun a mugger to drop a goddamn grizzly bear. Howard chuckled, shaking his head. And this? Tony picked up a compact, futuristic-looking rifle. Is the G-Force pulse rifle. It doesn't fire bullets. Instead, it uses compressed kinetic energy rounds. Enough force to knock an attacker on their ass without any penetration trauma. Good for house weapons. And it has AI-integrated software. You can't shoot just because you want to. It recognizes the threat before unlocking. Plus, completely unhackable, and it won't activate if a kid comes before it holding a toy gun or a plastic knife. Howard took the rifle, feeling the weight. It was light, well-balanced, and had zero recoil. So, you're giving civilians a way to fight back, Howard mused. Without mass-producing deadly weapons. Tony nodded. Exactly. You release these through government-approved civilian defense programs, and suddenly, we've armed the public without the risk of mass shootings. No fatalities. No stolen gun incidents. Just pure self-defense tech. Howard exhaled. Son, if this works, you're about to put every major arms manufacturer in the dirt. Tony grinned. Yeah, well, they had a good run. Tony turned and led Howard to the last station, and this was big. A red car sat in the middle of the test platform. It looked like a sports car, but sleeker, meaner, and more advanced, Howard asked. Car? Tony tapped the hood. This, Pops, is the future of transportation. Runs on a microarc reactor. No gas. No fossil fuels. Just pure energy. Howard's eyes widened. Wait. Wait. You put a reactor in a car? Tony smirked. Yep. A customized one. Howard took a slow breath. You do realize if you roll this out, you'll kill every oil and gas company overnight, right? Tony nodded. Yep. My tech will soon kill most of the companies. So, it doesn't matter anymore. Howard chuckled, shaking his head. You're really going for the throat, huh? Tony tapped the side of the car, and a holographic interface appeared, showcasing the core components. This baby gets over 10,000 miles per charge, and the charging stations? They run on localized arc reactor power grids. Meaning? Once we set up enough stations, people never have to pay for gas again. They will pay us half the price of what they are paying now. Howard exhaled. Well, there goes another one. Tony grinned. Yep. So here's what we do. We release these cars under Stark Industries, set up charging stations across major cities, and by the time Ford, GM, and Tesla figure out what's happening, he snapped his fingers. They're obsolete. Howard chuckled. Jesus Christ. You're about to eat the entire car industry alive. Tony smirked. Better me than some corporate dinosaur trying to sell half-assed, electric cars with shitty battery life. Howard exhaled. He ran a hand through his hair, processing everything. Tony wasn't just changing the game, that he was burning the rulebook, and Howard couldn't help but be impressed. After a long silence, he let out a deep breath and grinned. Well, kid, he said. You win. You're about to shake the whole damn world. Tony smirked. Damn right, I am. Howard shook his head. All right. Let's get to work. You better be ready for a fight. Tony's grin widened. Always. The scent of freshly grilled meat and roasted vegetables filled the air as Tony and Howard sat across from each other at one of the long tables in Horizon's private dining area. For once, Tony had agreed to step away from the lab and actually eat. Well, Yelena forced him, but that was beside the point. Howard sliced into his steak, studying his son between bites. So, about that formula I sent you. Tony, who was in the middle of taking a bite of his roasted chicken, paused. His eyes flicked up over the rim of his plate. He chewed thoughtfully, swallowed, and then wiped his mouth before speaking. Yeah, I meant to ask about that. Where'd you get it? Howard leaned back in his chair. Shield's bioscientists developed it. Or, at least, that's what they claim. Tony raised an eyebrow, setting his fork down. They developed it? He made air quotes. Or they recreated it from the original Super Soldier Serum? Howard exhaled. The latter. Tony smirked. Of course. Because playing God worked out so well the first time. Howard gave him a look but didn't argue. Instead, he continued, with all the dangerous individuals showing up, enhanced criminals, rogue metahumans, mutants. S.H.I.E.L.D. believes the world needs another perfect super soldier. Tony sighed, leaning back. Right. Or, another insane guy with SSS. Howard didn't deny it. It's a complicated issue, Tony. You and I both know that. Tony drummed his fingers against the table. Okay. So, who's the lucky test subject? Some pumped-up military guy? An elite agent? Howard hesitated. Just for a second, and that was enough for Tony to catch it. Tony's smirk faded. Who is it? Howard met his gaze. Peggy Carter. Tony blinked. He hadn't been expecting that. Wait. What? Howard nodded. You heard me. Peggy volunteered. She's already been prepped for the process. The serum trials start in 2 weeks. Oh, hell no. There's no way I'm gonna let her take this shitty serum. Tony let out a slow breath, rubbing his temple. Okay, first off, why? She's like 70. 72. This could kill her or worse. Howard set his fork down. Because she believes in S.H.I.E.L.D. In protecting the world. And she knows what the serum can do. Tony scoffed. Yeah, it can turn you into a super soldier, or it can turn you into the Red Skull. Real fun gamble. Howard's expression was unreadable. Peggy's a fighter. Even after retiring, she never stopped looking out for the world. Maybe she feels like she has one last mission left in her. Or, she just wants to use her last moments to do something worthwhile. Either way, I tried to talk her out of this, but nope. She's going to do it. Alright, so she wants to be the next Cap HAA. And I guess you found something fishy with the serum, right? Howard's jaw tightened slightly. Yes. I think something fishy is going on inside S.H.I.E.L.D's bioscience division. Tony raised an eyebrow. Thought you guys took out all the Hydra agents? Howard nodded. We did. But I can't shake this feeling, Tony. The way they handled this whole thing, it doesn't sit right with me. Tony frowned. Define doesn't sit right. Howard exhaled, pushing his plate aside. S.H.I.E.L.D. never planned to make another super soldier after Steve. Well, back then, S.H.I.E.L.D. did certain things. Government pressures. Those political bastards forced human experiments to perfect the serum. A lot of people were hurt in the process. So, after Fury took over, we buried it all and decided not to walk that path again. He took a sip of water. But now, with the rise of a new generation of criminals, we have no other choice. We started the program 6 months ago, and all of a sudden, they have a perfected formula. And they're just handing it over for trials? He shook his head. I don't buy it. Tony tapped his phone against the table, activating the holographic interface. A three-dimensional projection of the serum formula flickered to life between them, glowing with complex molecular structures and chemical sequences. Howard leaned forward, eyes narrowing as he examined the data. Tony sighed, rotating the hologram with a flick of his fingers. So, here's the fun part, Pops. This isn't a new formula. It's an old one. A very, very old one. Howard's brows furrowed. How old? Tony zoomed in on a specific chemical compound, highlighting it in red. Hydra old. This formula wasn't perfected by S.H.I.E.L.D. It was made by Hydra. And not just any Hydra, this is one of their failed prototypes with a little personal touch from someone. Howard sat up straight. Wait. You're telling me this isn't a recreation of the Super Soldier Serum? Tony exhaled. Oh, it's a recreation, all right. But not of Erskine's formula. This is from one of Hydra's attempts at making their own super soldiers after Captain America kicked Red Skull's ass. And guess what? It never worked. And don't ask how I know about Erskine and all this. He swiped his fingers, bringing up historical data. Old, classified files flickered onto the hologram, Hydra experimentation reports, test subjects, grim medical notes. Back when Tony destroyed Hydra, he copied the information. I did some digging and well. He pointed at the result. Howard's eyes widened as he read, subject number 47, initial injection, rapid physical enhancement observed, subject number 47, 4 hours post-injection, heightened aggression, severe muscle spasms, subject number 47, 10 hours post-injection, extreme psychosis, uncontrollable violent outbursts, subject number 47, 24 hours post-injection, bone liquefaction while still conscious. Subject terminated. Tony's voice was dry. Every single test ended like that. Either they turned into a raging psychopath, or their bones literally melted inside their bodies while they were still alive. Not exactly the glowing endorsement for a perfect formula. Howard's jaw tightened. Jesus, Tony nodded, crossing his arms. So yeah, whoever greenlit this crap either has no idea what they're doing or they knew exactly what they were doing and wanted Peggy dead. And considering how this stuff was buried deep in Hydra's archives, I'm betting on the latter. Howard rubbed his temple. So you're saying there's either a Hydra mole still inside S.H.I.E.L.D., or someone in the agency is desperate to climb the ranks and doesn't care who they kill to do it. Fury started the project, so if it fails, he will be in the line of fire. They are planning on taking down Peggy and Fury together, and probably all the old members. His mind went toward the last night's attack. Was it related to this? He wondered. Tony pointed at him. Ding ding ding. Give the man a cigar. Howard exhaled sharply, running a hand through his graying hair. This is bad, Tony. Real bad. If Peggy takes this serum, she's dead, Tony finished bluntly. Or worse, she turns into something S.H.I.E.L.D. has to put down. Either way, it's a goddamn setup. Howard clenched his fists. I need to shut this down immediately. Tony raised a hand. Hold on. We need to be smart about this. If we just barge in there waving red flags, whoever set this up is gonna know we're onto them, and they'll cover their tracks. We need to find out who is behind this. Howard took a deep breath, forcing himself to think rationally. All right. You're right. We do this carefully. He was already stressed, and now more stress. The holographic formula shifted, transforming as Tony swiped through the interface. Molecules restructured, compounds changed, and new elements appeared in glowing blue lines. Howard watched in silence as the flawed Super Soldier Serum disappeared, replaced by something entirely new, something perfected. Tony leaned back, arms crossed. And that, dear Dad, is the real deal. My version of the Super Soldier Serum. No bone liquefaction. No psychotic rage fits. No melting organs. Just pure, stable enhancement. Howard narrowed his eyes at the glowing formula. You just, what? Who do you think I am? Tony leaned back, sipping on his glass of orange juice. Howard stared at the glowing formula hovering in midair, his mind racing. Tony had just perfected the Super Soldier Serum. Just like that. No decades of failed experiments. No tragic test subjects. No catastrophic side effects, just pure, stable enhancement. Howard let out a slow breath and ran a hand down his face. Jesus, Tony. Do you even hear yourself? Tony smirked, casually swirling the orange juice in his glass. Loud and clear, pops. Howard gestured at the holographic formula. You're telling me you cracked the goddamn Super Soldier Serum overnight? Tony scoffed. Please. It was a piece of cake. There's no way he was going to tell Howard the truth about the data he took from the Widows and Hydra's facilities. Howard exhaled sharply. You little. He cut himself off, shaking his head. I should be surprised, but somehow, I'm not. Tony leaned forward, elbows on the table. His voice turned serious. Look, we both know Peggy taking that Hydra knockoff is a death sentence. We can't stop the trial without exposing our hands. But. He tapped the glowing blue formula. We can do something like. You bringing Peggy here, and I'll enhance her? Howard's eyes narrowed. You are serious? Tony nodded. Yup. Bring her here. Trust me, just like you always have. I got a plan. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like for latest videos.